My system access disappeared at 9:47 a.m. on a Wednesday while I was literally in the middle of running the monthly financial close process that kept the entire company's accounting system from imploding into chaos. One moment I was verifying general ledger entries for Q3 revenue recognition, the next moment every application kicked me out simultaneously with generic, access denied errors that meant someone with administrative privileges had manually revoked my credentials across all systems. No warning, no explanation, no courtesy heads up that I was about to lose access to the financial infrastructure I'd built and maintained for 7 years. I tried logging back in, thinking maybe it was a system glitch or network timeout. Access denied. Tried the backup accounting system. Access denied. I tried the database management console. Access denied. Someone had systematically locked me out of everything, and the only person with authority to do that was Gregory Paulson, our CFO who'd arrived 6 months ago with private equity backing and a track record of cutting costs by eliminating anyone who knew where the bodies were buried. I'm Casey Anderson, and I sat at my desk at Pinnacle Financial Systems staring at 7 monitors showing nothing but login screens and error messages, while my carefully organized monthly close process sat half-finished in systems I could no longer access. I'd been Director of Financial Systems and Operations for 7 years, 4 months, and 18 days, which meant I was the person who actually understood how our financial infrastructure worked, where every data flow originated and terminated, which manual processes still existed because automation had failed, and most importantly, what would happen if someone tried running the systems without understanding the architecture underneath the user interfaces. I wasn't the executive who attended board meetings or made strategic decisions about company direction. I drove a 9-year-old Honda Civic with 156,000 miles on it and a collection of parking garage receipts stuffed in the door pocket because I could never remember to expense them properly. I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment with mismatched furniture, a refrigerator containing mostly condiments and good intentions, and a closet full of business casual clothes that all looked identical because shopping felt like a waste of time. I'd rather spend optimizing database queries. I was technical, methodical, invisible to senior management until something broke, and apparently now unemployed because Gregory had decided I was too expensive for someone who just maintained systems. The trouble had started 4 months ago when Pinnacle got acquired by Apex Capital Partners, a private equity firm that specialized in buying profitable mid-size companies and optimizing them for resale by cutting costs, streamlining operations, and generally destroying everything that made the companies functional in pursuit of prettier financial statements. Gregory Paulson came with the acquisition, installed as CFO to modernize financial operations and reduce operational overhead. Gregory had that private equity executive profile, expensive wardrobe, consultancy background, and absolutely zero understanding of how financial systems actually worked beneath the PowerPoint presentations and dashboard metrics he loved showing to investors. His first move was announcing that Pinnacle was eliminating redundant operational roles and consolidating functions to improve efficiency. Translation: firing people who knew how things worked and replacing them with cheaper alternatives who would learn through trial and catastrophic error. He held a finance team meeting on July 12 where he presented a reorganization plan that looked impressive in slideware and devastating in reality. "We're restructuring financial operations to align with industry best practices," Gregory announced, clicking through slides showing organizational charts with fewer boxes than before. "Some roles will be eliminated, some will be consolidated, and we'll be implementing new automated systems to reduce manual processes." I raised my hand. What automated systems? Our current financial infrastructure is highly customized with manual processes that exist because automation failed for specific technical reasons. Which systems are you replacing? Gregory smiled condescendingly. "We're bringing in an enterprise resource planning system from Oracle that will handle all financial processes automatically. Your current system is outdated and requires too much manual intervention. Our current system is customized because our business model has unique revenue recognition requirements that standard ERP systems don't handle correctly. We tried Oracle ERP in 2019. It failed after 8 months because it couldn't handle our multi-currency revenue recognition and had to be heavily customized, which is why we built the current system. Are you planning to rebuild those customizations? Modern ERP systems have evolved. We won't need the level of customization you've built into the current system." Translation: We're going to ignore institutional knowledge and repeat expensive mistakes because admitting the old system works would mean admitting we need the person who built it. Over the next 3 months, Gregory systematically eliminated everyone on the finance team who understood how our systems actually worked. First to go was Rita Chen, our senior accountant who knew which manual journal entries needed to be recorded each month because certain automated processes had systematic errors we documented but never fixed because fixing them was more expensive than manual correction. Second was Marcus Webb, our financial analyst who understood why certain revenue accounts had to be reconciled manually because the system couldn't properly handle deferred revenue calculations for multi-year contracts. Third was Linda Tran, our systems administrator who maintained the database infrastructure and knew which overnight batch processes had to run in specific sequences or they'd corrupt financial data. By October, the finance team had been reduced from 12 people to 5, and I was the only person left who understood the complete architecture of our financial systems. Gregory had hired 3 new junior accountants with minimal experience who knew how to use Excel but had no idea what happened behind the accounting application interfaces they were clicking through. On October 15th, Gregory called me into his office. His corner office with windows overlooking the city, an expensive standing desk he never actually used standing, and collection of business books on his shelf that looked strategically placed but unread. "Casey, I want to discuss your role going forward. We're implementing the new Oracle ERP system starting January 1st, and we'll need to transition away from the legacy systems you've been maintaining. I think it's time we discuss separation terms. You're eliminating my position. We're restructuring to align with the new system architecture. Your role focuses on maintaining legacy infrastructure that will be phasing out. It makes sense to transition now rather than keeping you on through implementation. The Oracle ERP won't handle our multi-currency revenue recognition correctly. We tried this before. You'll need customization that will take months and require someone who understands our business model. We've been assured by Oracle that their current system handles complex revenue recognition. We won't need the level of customization you're suggesting." I knew this conversation was pointless. Gregory had decided I was too expensive and too knowledgeable, which made me a threat to his narrative that he was improving operations rather than destroying them. But I had one card to play that Gregory didn't know about. 3 years ago, after we'd experienced a major system failure that took 5 days to recover because we didn't have proper documentation or disaster recovery procedures, I'd written a comprehensive business continuity and disaster recovery plan. The plan documented every critical system, every process, every dependency, every recovery procedure, and every single person who needed access to emergency override capabilities if normal operations failed. The plan was stored in our document management system, had been approved by the then CFO, and included detailed instructions for disaster scenarios including key personnel departure. The key personnel departure section, which I'd written at 2 a.m. during the disaster recovery process because I was thinking about what would happen if I got hit by a bus, specified exact procedures for knowledge transfer, system access requirements, and emergency contacts. It also included an important provision: if someone with critical system knowledge departed suddenly without proper transition, emergency access protocols could be activated by remaining authorized personnel to ensure business continuity. And I'd made sure, when documenting the emergency access protocols, that I had backup administrator credentials that could only be activated through the disaster recovery process, stored in a secure system separate from normal credentials, specifically for scenarios where normal access had been compromised or revoked inappropriately. I documented everything properly, gotten it approved through official channels, and created a legitimate failsafe for disaster scenarios. And Gregory firing me without proper transition while financial close was in progress definitely qualified as a disaster scenario. Now before you scroll past thinking you know where this is going, about 82% of you haven't subscribed yet, and that's like watching someone set up the perfect chess trap and then leaving before they spring it. Subscribe right now. Because what happens when a CFO who doesn't understand systems fires the person who built the disaster recovery plan is educational in ways business schools don't cover. What kind of separation timeline are you proposing? I asked. 2-week severance, effective immediately. We'd like you to spend this week documenting critical processes and transitioning knowledge to the remaining team. Your last day would be Friday. 5 days to document 7 years of customized financial infrastructure. Sure. I'll need access to all systems to complete the documentation. Of course. We'll maintain your access through Friday. That conversation happened on Tuesday, October 15th at 3:47 p.m. On Wednesday, October 16th at 9:47 a.m., my access was revoked entirely while I was in the middle of monthly financial close. Gregory had lied about maintaining my access, probably because he'd decided I was a risk who might sabotage systems or steal data, not understanding that I'd already documented everything properly and didn't need to steal anything because I'd built legitimate disaster recovery procedures. I walked to Gregory's office. His assistant said he was in meetings all morning and couldn't be interrupted. I sent an email: my system access has been revoked while monthly close is in progress. This will cause data integrity issues and process failures. Please restore access immediately or provide an explanation. His response came back in 14 minutes. Access was revoked per security protocols following termination decision. The new team will complete a monthly close. Please vacate the premises by the end of business today. So much for the 2 weeks notice and 5 days of knowledge transfer. Gregory had decided to fire me immediately and figured the remaining team could figure out financial close through trial and error. I packed my personal items, collected my documentation, and left the building by 2:17 p.m. I didn't argue, didn't make a scene, didn't threaten anything. Just packed up quietly and left. Because I knew something Gregory didn't: monthly financial close at Pinnacle Financial Systems was a 15-step process with specific dependencies and manual interventions that had to happen in exact sequence or the entire financial reporting system would produce incorrect data. And the only documentation of that process was in my head and in the disaster recovery plan that Gregory had never bothered reading. That evening, I reviewed my copy of the Business Continuity and Disaster Recovery Plan, specifically the Key Personnel Departure section. The procedures were clear: if critical personnel departed without proper transition during active financial processes, remaining authorized personnel should activate emergency access protocols to ensure business continuity and data integrity. I was listed as an authorized disaster recovery coordinator in the plan. I had emergency access credentials that were separate from my normal system access, stored in the secure emergency systems that existed specifically for disaster scenarios. And Gregory firing me in the middle of monthly close while revoking my access definitely constituted a disaster scenario requiring emergency procedures. The disaster recovery plan was legitimate, approved, documented policy. Activating emergency procedures during an actual disaster wasn't unauthorized access, it was following approved protocols during a business continuity crisis. On Thursday morning, the first problem hit. One of the new junior accountants, trying to complete monthly closing, ran the automated revenue recognition process without first running the manual deferred revenue adjustment script. The automated process calculated current month revenue without accounting for multi-year contract deferrals, resulting in revenue being overstated by approximately $2.3 million. The accountant didn't realize this was wrong because she didn't understand how deferred revenue calculations worked and the system didn't show any error messages. On Friday morning, the second problem hit. Someone tried to close the month in the financial system without first reconciling the automated inventory valuation process with the manual corrections that had to be applied because our inventory system didn't correctly handle consignment inventory. Result: inventory was undervalued by $890,000 and cost of goods sold was misstated. By Friday afternoon, the third problem hit. The automated bank reconciliation process failed because no one had manually reconciled the outstanding check register with the bank statement, something that had to be done before the automated process could run correctly. The system produced reconciliation reports showing $1.2 million in discrepancies that made it look like money had disappeared. By Monday morning, October 21st, Pinnacle's financial close was a disaster. Revenue was misstated, inventory was wrong, bank reconciliations didn't balance, and the remaining finance team was panicking because they couldn't figure out what had gone wrong or how to fix it. That's when someone remembered the disaster recovery plan and realized it had procedures for exactly this scenario. On Tuesday, October 22nd, I received a call from Linda Martinez, Pinnacle's HR director. "Casey, we're experiencing issues with monthly financial close and need to discuss bringing you back temporarily as a consultant to help resolve the problems." My access was revoked. How do you expect me to help? We can restore your access if you agree to consult with us on fixing the close process. The disaster recovery plan has procedures for this scenario. Have you activated those procedures? Pause. What disaster recovery plan? The business continuity and disaster recovery plan I wrote 3 years ago. It's in the document management system. Section 7.3 covers key personnel departure during active financial processes. It specifies exact procedures for maintaining business continuity, including emergency access protocols. I'll review that and call you back. 2 hours later, Linda called again. We found the disaster recovery plan. According to this document, you have emergency access credentials for disaster scenarios. Is that correct? Correct. Emergency administrator access through the disaster recovery system, separate from normal credentials, specifically for scenarios where normal operations have been compromised. Gregory firing me in the middle of financial close while revoking my access qualifies as a disaster scenario under the plan's definitions. We'd like to engage you as a consultant to help complete the financial close and transition your knowledge properly. We're prepared to offer $400 per hour for consulting services. My normal salary had been equivalent to roughly $95 per hour. They were offering more than 4 times my normal rate because they'd created a crisis by firing me improperly. I'll need formal consulting agreement, full system access restored including emergency administrator privileges per the disaster recovery plan, and minimum guarantee of 160 hours. Agreed. The consulting agreement was executed on October 23rd. I returned to Pinnacle's office on October 24th with full administrator access, emergency override credentials, an hourly rate that made my previous salary look like allowance money. I spent the first day auditing what the remaining team had done. The financial close was catastrophically wrong, revenue overstated by $2.3 million, inventory understated by $890,000, bank reconciliations showing $1.2 million in phantom discrepancies, and dozens of smaller errors where automated processes had been run incorrectly because no one understood the manual steps required before automation could work. I spent the next 3 days fixing everything, reversing incorrect revenue recognition, correcting inventory valuations, reconciling bank accounts properly, and documenting every single step in excruciating detail so the remaining team could theoretically follow the procedures next month. On October 28th, I delivered the corrected financial close to Gregory. He looked at the documentation with barely concealed frustration. These processes are too complex. We need to simplify this. These processes are complex because your business model is complex. Multi-currency revenue recognition for multi-year contracts with deferred revenue accounting is inherently complex. The automation handles what it can. The manual steps exist because standard systems can't handle your specific requirements. The Oracle ERP will handle this automatically. Oracle ERP will have the same problems unless you customize it extensively, which will cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and take months. We went through this in 2019. You're repeating a failed experiment because you don't want to admit the current system works. Gregory didn't respond. He approved payment for my 160 hours of consulting, $64,000 for fixing the disaster he'd created by firing me improperly. In November, Gregory announced that Oracle ERP implementation was being delayed until Q2 because additional scoping work was required to ensure proper system configuration. Translation: Oracle had done their analysis and informed Gregory that customizing their ERP to handle Pinnacle's revenue recognition would cost $340,000 and take 9 months. In December, Pinnacle's board, increasingly concerned about the financial close disaster and the expensive consultant they'd had to hire to fix it, began asking questions about why the CFO had fired critical personnel in the middle of financial close without proper transition planning. In January, Gregory Paulson was transitioned to advisory role, which meant fired, and Pinnacle brought back their previous CFO who actually understood that operational knowledge had value and that firing the person who built your systems without transition planning was expensive stupidity. In February, the new CFO offered me a position as Senior Director of Financial Systems with 42% salary increase, retention bonus, and written guarantee that any future reorganizations would require proper knowledge transfer periods for critical systems personnel. I accepted. Returned to Pinnacle full-time, rebuilt the finance team with people who understood that complex businesses require complex systems, and implemented proper training programs so institutional knowledge wasn't siloed in single individuals. 6 months later, I updated the business continuity and disaster recovery plan with new procedures, better documentation, and clearer emergency protocols. The plan that had saved the company when Gregory's incompetence created a crisis became the foundation for proper operational resilience. 1 year after Gregory fired me, Pinnacle successfully completed their first fully automated financial close using the customized systems I'd built, properly maintained by a team that understood how they worked. The Oracle ERP project was officially cancelled after cost-benefit analysis showed it would cost $850,000 to achieve what the current system already did effectively. 2 years later, I ran into Gregory at a financial systems conference. He was working as an independent consultant helping companies optimize financial operations, which meant he was between full-time positions and trying to rebuild a reputation damaged by the Pinnacle disaster. "Casey," he said uncomfortably, "I heard you're still at Pinnacle. Congratulations on the promotion." "Thanks. Still maintaining the same systems you wanted to replace. Turns out they work well when you understand how they're designed and don't fire the people who built them during financial close." I underestimated the complexity of the transition. You underestimated the value of institutional knowledge and proper business continuity planning. You fired me without reading the disaster recovery plan that documented exactly what would happen if you did that. The plan I'd written, gotten approved, and stored in official company systems. You created the disaster I'd planned for. In hindsight, I should have approached the transition differently. In hindsight, you should have read the documentation before making decisions about systems you didn't understand. The lesson isn't about revenge, though watching Gregory learn that firing critical personnel without transition planning costs more than keeping them was satisfying. The real lesson is simpler: institutional knowledge has value, disaster recovery planning exists for reasons, and executives who don't read documentation learn expensive lessons when disasters happen. Gregory thought revoking my access would eliminate me as a problem. What he didn't understand was that I'd already documented disaster scenarios, including the one he was creating, built legitimate emergency procedures for business continuity, and created fail-safes that protected the company even when leadership made catastrophic decisions. That disaster recovery plan wasn't revenge preparation, it was professional responsibility. When I wrote it at 2 a.m. during a previous crisis, I was thinking about protecting the company from disasters, not about protecting myself from incompetent executives. But it turned out those were the same thing. Thanks for staying through this story, everyone who understands that documentation isn't just paperwork, it's insurance against institutional stupidity. If this resonated, if you've been fired by executives who didn't understand what you actually did, subscribe and share your experience. These workplace tales remind us that proper planning protects us, documentation creates accountability, and sometimes the best defense against bad management is having written down exactly what happens when they make bad decisions. Your knowledge doesn't disappear when someone revokes your access. The systems remember, the documentation survives, and sometimes the disaster plan you wrote to protect the company ends up protecting you instead.